Hello, I'm a nerd named Ryan. Let's talk about Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I reviewed Episodes 1 and 2 a while back, actually, a couple of months ago, on the channel. Never got around to reviewing the third one, so we're doing it now. This is the one that's considered by a lot of people to be the absolute best of the prequel trilogy, and yeah, it's not hard to see why. It's also one of the most, it's also in my view one of the darkest movies in the Star Wars franchise. So let's get into it. There will be spoilers throughout, so if you haven't seen this movie from 2005, go watch it first, I guess. So Star Wars Episode 3 is, in my view, probably the best of the prequels. I don't know if it's necessarily my favourite. I go between this and Episode 1 as my favourite because I like to rewatch both of those movies a lot. But there's a lot of really good stuff in this movie. That being said, there are still issues with it, and a lot of those issues are issues that I've had throughout the prequel trilogy. Specifically stuff like the dialogue being kind of clunky and cheesy and the acting being a little bit wooden in places. But overall, I think this movie is great, and actually those problems that I have with the franchise, with the prequel trilogy as a whole, they're not as bad in this movie. I think the dialogue is considerably better. I think the acting is considerably better than it has been previously. There are still a few exceptions, and we'll get to that. But overall, this is such a good, fun movie. Like the opening sequence of this, the opening sort of 20 minutes where they're going to rescue, where Obi-Wan and Anakin are going to rescue Palpatine. That is such a good sequence. We've got this incredible like space battle going on. You know, the Clone Wars is, this is in the middle of the Clone Wars, so there's, a lot of, battles and war going on, but we have this really great battle sequence that we open up with. The CGI in that opening scene, by the way, looks really good. Considering this is a movie from 2005, I think a lot of the CGI in these big battle sequences really holds up really well. I'm a big fan of that. And of course, we meet General Grievous. There's some battle sequences there. Obi-Wan and Anakin, I like their relationship in this much more than I do in Attack of the Clones. It's not bad in Attack of the Clones, but I love it here. They have a lot more banter with each other, and they actually do feel like they're, properly, good mates in this, which makes the, the events of the movie feel all that more tragic when Anakin finally turns to the dark side. But yeah, I love this opening sequence. It's like 20 minutes long, but it's so good. It's action-packed. It doesn't sort of slow down that much. It's just really kind of fast-paced, go, next thing. But I really like that. I think that's an excellent kind of way to open a film like this, with this big, epic battle sequence. Establish the relationship of Obi-Wan and Anakin with their banter and their teamwork. Set up General Grievous as the kind of secondary antagonist for this movie. And also, set up some of the wider implications for the film. And also set up Palpatine manipulating Anakin by having him kill Count Dooku, which I really like Count Dooku, and I'm so sad that he got killed in this, but it's great. But I understand why they need to do it. Christopher Lee, in the limited amount of time he has in this film, is really, really good. This opening kind of 20 minutes, no complaints with that at all. Really, really love that completely. So yeah, I love that opening sequence, and I love the scene with Count Dooku because it sets up, Palpatine's kind of endgame of, I'm going to turn Anakin Skywalker to the dark side, the most, he can be more powerful than all the Jedi, and I'm going to have him on my side. Really, really like that. And yeah, the story has some interesting developments. I like, again, the thing that I've liked in the prequel trilogy more as an adult than as a kid, I really appreciate kind of the political drama that goes on in these movies. And there's less of that here. Palpatine kind of already has that power. It's just him kind of securing the ultimate power and sort of rebuilding the Empire and, crushing the Jedi. But I think, the political stuff that happens in the first two movies really leads into that really well, and I think that's done really, really well here. So I think the overarching kind of narrative of Palpatine kind of manipulating everything politically and taking over, bringing about, the Empire and destroying the Jedi, that's a really, really cool... that's a great story arc throughout this series, and I really, really like it here. I don't know how to feel about General Grievous, man. I really like the design of him, and I think he is kind of cool, but at the same time, he is pretty useless as a villain. Like, Dooku and Maul at least kind of held their own against the Jedi, but, like, I feel like he gets bested by Obi-Wan way too easily twice. So I don't know, I like General Grievous, but I feel like he's underused in the movie. And you could argue that's true with Dooku and Maul in episodes 2 and 1 as well. But I don't know, I feel like General Grievous gets the worst of it. I would have liked to have seen him be a bit more badass for more of the film, but I realise the film isn't about him, really. This, of course, is also the movie where we get that great moment of Obi-Wan going, just sort of landing, coming over going, hello there! That's a great moment, I love that. I really love Obi-Wan in this movie. I love Obi-Wan in general. Like, I think Ewan McGregor is great throughout these films. I think, actually, Obi-Wan, Ian McDiarmid and Natalie Portman are probably my favourite 3 kind of actors throughout this trilogy. I think they're really, really good. All 3 of them are great, and they're all great in this movie as well. Not the biggest fan of the characterisation of Padme in this one, but we'll get to that. But Obi-Wan I really, really like. I think Ewan McGregor, you know, he really kind of, his performance in this is great, especially kind of towards the end where he realises that Anakin, you know, is turning to the dark side, when he lets his emotions kind of show in that scene in the lightsaber duel, which is great. But yeah, he is fantastic in the movie. Ewan McGregor's just a great actor, and Obi-Wan is a role that he was just born to play. He is so good as Obi-Wan throughout the entire trilogy, but especially here. I really like Hayden Christensen in this movie as well. Like I think I said in my Attack of the Clones video, that when he's not bogged down with the clunky dialogue that George Lucas writes, Hayden Christensen is actually really good. Like when he's just allowed to kind of act with his facial expressions and his body language, he's really, really good. And he's even better here. Like when he turns to the dark side, and you see him kind of just walking around with the hood up and just kind of staring, he's really good. Those are some great moments. His body language, his face, it's all just brilliantly done. Again, the dialogue does occasionally let him down, especially in the scenes earlier on in the film where he's, you know, him and Padme have the romance stuff. That's not great, but like, and some of the dialogue isn't good. But he is really good in this movie. I really, really like him in this film. My biggest issues with the movie are with the writing, really, and that's kind of a thing that's been consistent throughout this prequel trilogy. First off, the dialogue is once again quite clunky. It's not as bad here, but there's still some really bad dialogue, especially in the bits with, you know, with Padme and Anakin when they're kind of flirting with it, like, you're so beautiful. It's only because I'm so in love. No, it's because I am so in love with you. Like, what is this dialogue, George? For fuck's sake. What are we doing here? This is bad dialogue. So yeah, the romance stuff, I've always thought the romance kind of the romantic dialogue between Padme and Anakin, I've always thought that was kind of one of the worst elements of this trilogy. Like, it's bad in Attack of the Clones as well. It's actually worse in Attack of the Clones than it is here. They don't do it as much here, but it's still pretty poor here, I'm afraid. Also, there's a lot of dialogue, again, throughout the trilogy. There seems to be a lot of dialogue where it's like, tell, don't show, and I don't like that. There's a lot of unnecessary dialogue. And this is something that George Lucas would do in, you know, the special edition of Return of the Jedi as well, you know, where Darth Vader turns on the Emperor and throws him off the thing. Like, we understood everything that was going on in that scene, George. You didn't need to add the no to Darth Vader. That didn't help, right? There's some of that here as well, with the, you know, where the dialogue is kind of very unnecessary, especially in the scene where Padme goes and confronts Anakin when he's, you know, turned fully to the dark side. And it's the bit where, you know, with the, you're breaking my heart, Anakin. Like, you don't need that dialogue there, right? Natalie Portman is a very good actor. Just let her be a good actor. When she's listening to what he's saying to her and she's, like, backing away slowly and sort of subtly shaking her head and starting to cry and she looks genuinely terrified of him, that's all you need her to do. She can convey how far gone he is and how, you know, he's breaking her heart just with her facial expressions and just with her body language and just with all the physical acting she's doing. You don't need her to also say, you're breaking my heart, Anakin, like that. I've never liked that line. I've always thought that line was unnecessary. I don't think you needed it. And there's a few kind of elements in the film where the dialogue's a bit clunky. Ultimately, I think, really, the bits where the writing lets me down is in a couple of little plot elements that I don't like. It doesn't ruin the movie for me. I still really like the film. But there's a couple of moments where I'm like, why is this? Why do this? Right? So, like... But for me, the bits where the dialogue is at its worst are... One, there's the bit where, you know, Anakin has become Darth Vader and he does the, no! You don't need that. That's... Why do that, right? Like, that scene of Anakin changing into Darth Vader, that was so good up until that point, where you're seeing all the bits added to him, where you see the point of view shot of the mask coming down. All of that was so good. All you needed to do was have Palpatine say, you know, oh, you killed Padme, and then just have, you know, stuff start to explode and burst around him, like show that he's, you know, he's channeling all his anger through and pain through the Force, and have stuff break around him and have stuff go wild. That would have been a much better way of conveying how utterly devastated he is, rather than have him do a big dramatic no, which, you know, has become a meme. So that's not great. For me, though, the worst bit of dialogue and the worst thing in this movie, the thing I really don't like in this film, is where Padme is giving birth to Luke and Leia, and the little droid, the little doctor droid, tells Obi-Wan, oh yeah, no, physically she's perfectly healthy, but it's like she's lost the will to live. And I'm like, you're seriously going to do, she's dying of a broken heart? I mean, for God's sake. That, I've never liked that as a reason. Like, I've heard the fan theory. There's a fan theory that, oh, actually it's, you know, it's the Emperor killing her with actually killed her with the Force. And, like, fine, but if you're going to do that, show that in the film, right? If they don't show that in the film, and it's just a fan theory, like the film's explanation is she dies of a broken heart. And I'm sorry, I can't get behind that. That's just bad writing. I don't like that at all. That bit kind of sours the movie for me. I still love the movie overall. The movie is still one of my favourites in the Star Wars franchise. There's so much good stuff, but it's just that line. And actually, the characterization of Padme in general in this movie doesn't really sit well with me. Like, I really like Padme in those first two movies. I think she is an absolute badass. She's really, really good. I like her a lot in those first two films. And I understand that in this film she needs to take a more kind of reduced role. She needs to be more reactive to Anakin and stuff like that. And she needs to take a bit more of a backseat because throughout the movie she is pregnant. And that's all fine. But I feel like a lot of the things that made her a really interesting character for me in those first two movies are kind of gone in this film, and that's a real shame, because Natalie Portman is still great. I really like Natalie Portman in these movies, and she's good here too, but I feel like a lot of the stuff that made me really like Padme in those first two movies is absent here, and that's a real shame. But I still love this movie. There's still a lot of stuff to really like in this movie, including what I think is probably the best lightsaber duel in Star Wars. I love the lightsaber battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin. Like, I mentioned in my Attack of the Clones review that the Battle of Geonosis is one of my favourite bits in Star Wars, one of my favourite kind of large-scale battles in Star Wars. This is absolutely my favourite lightsaber battle in Star Wars. I love this so much. Like, as good as the scene in Episode 1 with Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, as good as that is, I feel like this has a real kind of intense feel to it. This feels personal. We've built up this moment throughout the trilogy, and it feels so personal, and it feels so intense, and it feels so great. And sure, you look at it and it's goofy, and it's you know, it's very clearly choreographed. They're doing flips and all stuff like that, and it looks almost like they're dancing at points. But you don't care, because the story and the characterization, because the story and the characters have built to such a point where you're like, this feels personal, this feels intense, this feels like an actual, you know, fight to the death between two people who used to really like each other, but have just you know, they're letting all their feelings, all their emotions out in this lightsaber battle, and it's just so good. And you've got the lava going up around them. It's just really well shot, really well designed. It looks great. Again, the acting of Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen is great. A lot of it's done with just their body language and their facial expressions. Hayden Christensen especially looks really, really great in this scene. He's really good in this scene. Just, the emotion he conveys just with his face, just with his body language. Absolutely fantastic. And it caps off with what I think is one of the most tragic moments in Star Wars. Like, this film is probably the most tragic of the Star Wars franchise. Like, there's no... Like, even something like Rogue One, which is a dark movie, has that sliver of hope throughout it. You don't get that kind of sliver of hope here in Revenge of the Sith. This is the film where it feels like, no, the bad guys have won. There's no coming back from this. It has that kind of tragedy to it, and I kind of love that. There's a few moments in this movie that are really kind of grim to look at. When they have the, execute Order 66 and you see all the Jedi just being gunned down by clone troopers. That's a really dark moment to kind of watch. It has this kind of real kind of somber feeling to it. And you get that same kind of thing where you see Anakin slowly kind of sliding down towards the lava and Obi-Wan just leaves him there. And you get Anakin just on fire. And it's really kind of graphic for a Star Wars movie. Like, seeing him fully on fire, screaming in pain. It's a really dark, but really effective moment. So that and Order 66 are really just great, intense, dark moments in Star Wars that I really, really love. And they make up for, she's dying of a broken heart and no! I think those two scenes really kind of make up for those other two scenes, because you feel kind of especially with Order 66, you kind of feel the gravity and the hopelessness of what's happening now. Palpatine has won, he's taking over, the Empire will rise, all that good stuff. I realise I've probably rambled on about this movie more than I usually do, which is really saying something for me, but I just really, really like Revenge of the Sith, despite its flaws, which again, it has some flaws, but it's just a really solid, really good Star Wars movie overall. The CGI holds up really well for 2005. The acting is mostly really good in this. John Williams, of course, he always brings a great score to the Star Wars movies, and here is no exception. The music is just phenomenal, and this is a great way to cap off the prequel trilogy. This is kind of the one, even people who don't really like the prequels, a lot of them go, yeah, this is the prequel movie that is, acceptable. This is the one that we go, alright, yeah, fine, there's some good stuff here. Again, there is some clunky stuff and some bad stuff as well, but overall, this is the best of the prequel movies. Whether or not it's my favourite or not, I think it probably is, actually. Like, as much as I love Phantom Menace, this one probably is my favourite of the prequels. I really, really like this a lot. But yeah, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. That's all the, rambling I have to do about this movie for today. Let me know what you think of Star Wars Episode 3 and just the prequel series in general down in the comments. Let's have a chat about it. That's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you when I see you. Bye.